I'm Gustavo Muñoz, and I'm going to begin the presentation about this project called Vivoteca. And I'm going to begin with a question that is, what can we learn from life cycles of change and renewal? I assume that we are all going through cycles, infinite cycles in life of change and renewal. And before going deeper into this question, I'm going to talk a little bit about my background. Okay, is that sorry? um, I have a degree in industrial and systems engineering, and I became a software developer uh, because of curiosity and interest, and just because it was something that I learned and liked since I was a child. So after graduating and working in warehouses and manufacturing facilities as an industrial and systems engineer, I quit the job and began a company called Anagrama, which is a branding agency. We began in 2008, and I partnered up with creative people. And I was more like on the business side. So I learned how to help creative people translate business needs and creative process into a way that was like measurable, and that was you could understand how much like you were charging for a logo for creative work, and how much time you had to dedicate to that, and building processes around that so that it was like a profitable business. But I was always like the manager, or like seen as the accountant, which I love that description, but it hurt me a bit. So I was like exploring or trying to learn around graphic design, because all of the work that was done within this company was around like Swiss design and Joseph Muller, Grogman, grid systems, etc. So I started to research around that, and I found out that a lot of the things done in graphic design have a lot of things related to proportions and math, and I began to love that. So I
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.
And then I became a business strategy and financial planning person around different types of companies, offering consulting services around everything that has to do with optimizing businesses from the strategic growth and financial planning areas. On my side projects, I'm a person with type 1 diabetes, which is an autoimmune disease. And around 10 years ago, or 12 years ago, I began working on a project that was an artificial pancreas, which is an open source project, which is the mix of shitty technology with an incredible community. That technology was technology that was not smart. We had smartphones, but our insulin pumps were not smart. We had to do everything manually. And I began to use code to understand how our biological cycles and systems work. The insulin absorption curves interacting with carbohydrate absorption curves and physical activity, and all of those things are mixed into this very complex system, which is our body, which generates blood glucose reading. And then we began developing systems that could predict that behavior and then automate the insulin delivery system. So after many testing and many experiments, me being the experimenter with my body, I ended up creating the system that I still wear up to this date, which is this device, which basically automates all of the insulin delivery and helps me maintain very nice blood glucose levels. And I actually ended up giving a TEDx talk a couple years ago, and I'm very happy with that. I also have dedicated a lot of time to doing helping the community in teaching STEAM related things: science, technology, engineering, art, and math. And this is back at my hometown. We began getting funds from companies and government to build this space, which is basically a lab for kids. We've been building a very basic plotter that I will replace with Nicola's design, but this was our first banana drawing robot. And yeah, doing a lot of things around AI. And lately, I began a project with biomedical engineering students. And what we plan to do is build. Diabetes is a very frequent occurring issue in Mexico, and has a very high social cost for medical institutions. And devices are not available, or they're very expensive. An insulin pump like the one I'm wearing, which, well, this one is very old. This is like 15 years old, but a new one costs around $8,000 plus the monthly costs of maintaining. So we're building one that will cost less than $100, and that will be open source. And hopefully that will get a clinical study so that it can be approved by the health authority. But that is just in the plans as of right now. We're just working on prototypes right now, all of the software, and advancing slowly with biomedical engineering students. So now to the part related to this talk is generative art and pen plotters. I've been doing generative art since 2011, as I mentioned. I discovered processing through one of my partners at Anagrama, who had interviewed Casey Rias when he was working for a magazine. And I got really interested in what that was all about. And I started playing with the software, but I didn't take it so seriously until the pandemic. So when I was at home, stuck, having nothing to do or outside, I began to document my work and started posting it online. And I saw people liking it. Then I bought a plotter, and I started plotting those projects, those art projects. And I've done that since 5 years now. And also I began playing with sound synthesizers and animating some of the pieces. And the Taurus has been a shape that I have been returning back very often. And I like it because at first there was like this challenge that had to do with how to draw it using like degrees and trigonometry functions, and got me really interested. And it has been coming back throughout the years. I use it in different artworks. And this was one of the latest. Also, this is like I've been advancing also in the complexity of the work with different inks, different types of pens, to doing things that, as I mentioned before, I like how textures and like reflections using negative space and all things related to how metal or glass looks. And I like to do that with lines. And I think I've achieved some of that in my work. So also this is, I don't know if the volume is going to be very high. Using like animations. People ask me if the sound or the synthesizers are connected to the animation, but no, I do this like when experts for movies, they add the sound, like tapping on things. I do that, but with the synthesizer watching the animation. And when it makes sense to me, I feel that it has a perfect fit, and that's how I finish the piece for the audio part, at least. So yeah, coming back to this question about what we can learn from life cycles of change and renewal, I began getting interested in positive psychology and neurolinguistic programming about a year ago. I began reading a lot about that, and Monica, my wife, is a psychologist, also very interested in positive psychology, and a lot of what we talked about had to do with this. And yeah, I began for this piece working with tiles. And in this specific example, a tile, well, it's like a square. And when we think about neurolinguistic programming, it has to do a lot, or some of the concepts that I learned while reading at it is the way that we use language within ourselves or within our minds is really important to how we see things, how we frame things. So, for example, a white square could be seen like a napkin, maybe, or like a checkers flag, or I don't know, if it's red, maybe it's like something that gives you like danger or alert. If it's green, oh, maybe that's like a red light for the street or whatever. it's only a square, but you can frame it however you want, and you can interpret it the way you want, and I think or I have been like thinking about how many of our ideas or memories or thoughts behave in a similar way. And some of the experiments that books show is, for example, they give this very simple example of like, think of a lemon, like a green or a yellow lemon, and you can smell it, and then you cut it, and you start to squeeze it, and then you taste the lemon, and I don't know if while thinking about this you start to salivate, and that very simple example of you salivating is how language affects how you think, and how your brain does not know how to differentiate between the things that you think that are real versus the things that you think that are imaginary. And there are other examples also that have to do with this. Like, think about something that you did yesterday, and think about the image that you have about that thing that you did yesterday, and imagine that. And then think about something that you did not do yesterday, and imagine it like side by side. What's the difference? There are differences. Maybe you imagine something with sound or animated, and the thing that is imaginary maybe it's like a still image, but those are still like things that are in your mind, and the brain doesn't know how to differentiate between those. So you can, when you think about that, you can sometimes like put a little bit of effort in that, and start like manipulating your ideas so that they become positive or different than what you were thinking before doing that. So that concept, I started to apply it to the piece, and I thought about the tiles, each one of them being like an experience, a memory, a sensation, and how they are all interconnected, being side by side. And some of them are not connected, black spaces or blank spaces. And then I thought, like, well, I like this idea of all of the memories and ideas and feelings being connected, but what happens with the ones in the edges? Like, how does this one over here connect with this one in the bottom? And the torus is perfect for that, because when you unite this edge with this edge, you get a tube. And when you have the tube and you connect this edge with this edge, now you get a torus. So a torus is like an infinite shape that allows interconnectivity between all of the points on the surface of the shape. And I really like that concept for this piece because of that. So it became like an analysis or of our cycles of experiences, memories, and emotions. And this was like the initial shape for the torus, and it looked great, but I needed to add like more of like a complexity that could describe maybe the challenges or the differences in temperament for each person. And that's where I began adding different types of noise in the texture, and different types of noise in how the tiles are distributed around the shape. So after that, like, I have the shape, I have these textures. How can I use color to add to this concept? So I thought about my memories as a child, being a child from the 80s, and I saw a lot of neon being used. So I looked for inspiration in Warakami, which is a designer that does these types of designs from the 80s, a lot of neon colors. Mike Winkelmann, who did a lot of also imagery related to that, which were like these futuristic images that gave us this feeling of there's something great coming from in the future, and we live looking at that and aspiring to that coming future. And also Trapper Keeper notebooks that I don't know if you are familiar with this, but at least for me, they were common when I was in elementary school, and they had all these types of imagery with neon and shapes on them. So the generative process, I'm going to speak with all of that concepts in the background, how I ended up with the final work or the final piece. So we have the tiles, we have color that is chosen also by the hash for this piece when you generate it. And there are like different tones of the color. And then we add some noise to add this texture to each of the pieces. And afterwards, I started using how to disconnect the tiles to give this feeling of, well, there are some ideas, some emotions that are hardly linked together, but are others that are maybe not as connected or not as related between them. I added this background to present it as a, I don't know, I thought about like how jewelry is presented when being bought, like in this little nice box with a nice texture around it. And I like that idea for the piece. And then I also thought about, well, what about like new things that you learn, new discoveries? I thought about them as different shapes appearing on the work, and adding a little bit of glow to add to that mystery of discovering and learning and having these new ideas come up while living your life. So this was the end piece. And obviously, as everyone else's, every time that you generate a new one, well, colors and textures and everything change, but the main, the base is the same. And there's a final concept that I also really have liked and have explored a lot, which is the overview effect. I don't know if you heard about this, but it has to do with this feeling that astronauts have when they're in space and they're, I don't know, sitting in the International Space Station or in their spaceship or whatever, and they look back at Earth and it looks like this giant rock sitting in the middle of space and everything is black all around and we're just infinitely like alone in space. And they look back at Earth and they look like the issues and the problems that we fight about, the politics, the everything, and how it seems like very, like, why are we fighting for those things? Why are we discussing? Why are we having those types of issues while we could live like much better, much positive lives? So I like this concept about this way of viewing our lives. And it's like an invitation for all of you when you approach the piece and look at it, to look at it as a sort of like a reflection of yourself. I think it's gonna be less uncomfortable than watching yourself on a mirror. Watching the piece and trying to relate each of the ideas, the feelings, the emotions that you live through every day, and how those can be rewritten and put in a more positive perspective, and that could help you advance in life. So that's it. Thank you. I don't know if you have any questions. Any questions? Oh. So technically, I'm not asking the Go ahead. Go ahead. You can also. Okay. And I'm wondering, is it really by some sort of ray tracing? No. Yeah, it's like cheats that I actually learned to do this at Anagrama. It's layering and layering using points and changing like their glow and the opacity. See, so I use like a random function to play with the opacity of each of the points, and also a glowing. There's a function in P5 where you can add glow to a layer, and you can activate and deactivate that. So I activate and deactivate it depending on the value that you get from a function, and that's what makes it look like some of the points are glowing really high and others look more like I don't know how to say it, um like solid, or yeah, faded out pixel and point. And yeah, I played a lot with the glow because I had really trouble in these parts of the shape on the center, since when you're drawing a circle and or a half a circle in this types of shapes, uh the distance here becomes very close. So when you add glow, it saturates a lot and it does not look okay. So I have functions that limit that after certain degrees, stop doing any glowing so that you don't ruin the final shape. And a lot of those details are yeah. Oh, this one. Yeah. Okay. That one was it. Actually, began like with a bug. I did like when I get to the edge of the torus, I trace a straight line like upwards, continuing on that degree until we go off the screen. So what I do that there is there's a line that when it ends, it closes the shape. So the shape closing gives that solid look, and those like differences here like with these types of shading is the closing of the line with the noise makes it that some of the color ends up on on one of side only of the square, and when you put each of the lines that are being traced, you get that like shadow effect, but it's a bug. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Any more questions? Okay, thank you.